Hey, everybody. This is the Book Asylum Podcast. I'm Jenn. And what happens when we have a new book coming out with a bunch of different authors? We're about to find out. It sounds like it's going to be a great time. And I cannot wait to have everybody on here and talk to everybody. So stay tuned. And here we are with Josh and Heather Daughtry. We have Bridget DeBrave. We have Wesley Smith, Brooklyn Ian Butler, and I am Jenn. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am so excited to see everyone.
Hello.
Hi again.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks for coming on. I haven't had one this big and this interactive in like a long time. And since we, kind of went to the new format where it's just one or two of us questioning our authors and stuff like that. But this was really awesome that Heather had contacted me to get you guys on here so that we could talk about the Hospital of Haunts. And because this is coming out when?
October 1st. So
October 1st.
Next week.
5 days.
5 days.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Yeah.
Good grief.
I think we set all the book releases on Tuesdays. I think that's pretty much par for the course on the industry. Like, remember how movies used to come out on Fridays?
Yeah.
Books come out on Tuesdays.
Well, that's awesome. And everybody has a story or more in that book, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. What made you guys decide to do an anthology? I'll ask you two, the Daughtry guys.
Doherty.
Sorry. Here I am. I'm like, you go through this every time with me too. Just like Paul, I always call him Ison or Eason, and he goes, it's Ison. And I'm like, I can say it when I'm not on air. So.
Well, when Heather and I got married last year, and we joined Water Tower Hill with her Parlor Ghost Press, so she had started her own press to do horror anthologies. And because I brought in a skill set that she needed,
it's the only reason I married him.
We put out this one last year, and it got really big. And so then she decided to do like 13 of these.
Yeah, there's going to be 13 of them all together.
So there's the second one. So
oh wow.
Yeah, so that's and they're just they're blowing up. Everybody loves them.
Awesome.
What made you decide to do an anthology?
What made me decide to do an anthology? So I'm just going to say this really fast because I want everybody to get to talk. But I love to read and I love to write, but for some reason doing anthologies is my favorite thing ever. The putting them together, the finding the people, the organizing them. I don't know why. It's way more fun and satisfying to me than just writing a book on my own. And I guess probably a lot of people think that's weird, but I love to do it, and I always wanted to do it. And I actually had talked to a couple of different publishers before Josh and I met, and they'd been like, "Oh, you should do our anthologies for us." And I was like, "Great." And then they were like, "Oh, we don't have money to do anthologies right now." So I finally just decided I was going to do one myself. And that was how House of Haunt started. And we had so much fun doing that we just decided to do more. So here we are doing the next one.
Awesome. So Bridget, I would like to ask you, can you kind of, without any spoilers, give us kind of what your story was about?
Bridget's frozen.
I think she's frozen. Okay, Wesley, can you kind of tell me what story you had in there and kind of what it was about a little bit?
Yeah, I had the security ward. So my story is called The Security Guard. It is about a new security guard who comes to to Lynchhurst to actually discover there's something going on in his past, and that his mother had passed away in Lynchhurst. So he wants to uncover what actually happened to her.
Okay. God, that sounds cool.
Yeah, so the hospital is called Lynchhurst Hospital. It's in, I think, rural Virginia, and we put a history in there of over like 100 and something years. So the stories kind of all fall within almost a 200-year period.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And then let's see, Brooklyn.
Right.
Yeah. Yay. Brooklyn, go ahead and give me kind of a little synopsis of your story that's in there.
Okay. Well, with House of Haunts, Heather contacted me and asked me to do the garage because I'm an ex-mechanic, and I'm just like, hell yeah. But when we knew the next one was going to be a hospital, I immediately called dibs on the daycare because my mom and grandma co-owned the hospital daycare in my town.
Oh, creepy.
So I like had immediately the idea of how my ghost would manifest and everything.
That is so cool. So each person pretty much is doing a room in the hospital
Yeah, or a ward.
or a ward. Okay. And then Bridget, you had frozen. So
Yes.
what can you kind of tell me what your area was and kind of what was your story a little bit about without giving any spoilers?
Oh, of course. I wanted radiology because I have this obsession with burned in images. I think it's because I grew up near a very haunted house, and that's one of the things there is that we get photo artifacts there. So that's something I associate very strongly with ghosts.
Nice.
So I thought, what if there was one appearing in an X-ray? And yeah,
Has that ever been done?
I don't
I
know.
don't think so. I haven't read any books where that has been done. That's really awesome. That is so ingenious. Oh my God. All right. So I would like to find out from each one of you, how long you guys have been writing, what got you interested in it. So Josh and Heather, I know you two are also authors as well as owners of the publishing company. So why don't you guys start? Tell me, we'll start with Heather, ladies first, and we'll find out, what got you into writing and how long have you been doing it?
I sat down to write my first story in November of 2020.
Mhm.
I had been doing book reviews for a little while, and I guess when I kind of saw the indie publishing world and I saw that getting a book published didn't have to be as difficult as the world makes it seem, I thought,
Yeah.
well, I'll try this because I've always liked to write. So I sat down. It was NaNoWriMo was going on, which we're not going to talk about now, but so I thought, well, I'll try this, and I did a 40,000 word sort of novella in 2020, and then published it right before my 40th birthday in 2021, and then was like, oh, I do like this, and people seem to like my writing, so that was Knock Knock, and then I did Tales My Grandmother Told Me the year after that, and then we did Echoes of the Dead earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, like I said, I almost would rather do the anthologies than write my own whole books right now. But I am still writing. It's just slow because
Yeah.
we're busy doing everything else.
Right, because you're also the editor and you edit for other things
I
too,
do
correct?
edit for other people. Yes, I started editing. It's been about 2 years now that I've been editing for other people, and I think I've edited like 50 novels for people in the last 2 years.
Wow.
I like to
Wow.
do that.
All right. Josh, how about you?
I think my story is pretty well documented. I started right after my 40th birthday. I was at the bottom of a hole, and it was I was going to unalive myself, and I didn't want to leave questions behind me. So I tell the press all the time that my very first book was my suicide note to my children, which was just my story. But as soon as I finished writing the end on that, the whole world changed. Plus a lot of smelling salts and a lot of therapy. But after that, I got the writing bug. I've written 6 novels, working on my 7th one right now. And after I finished 2, I got a 4-book contract with a big 5 publisher, and the contract was horrible. I threw the pen down, said I could probably do it better myself. They made me find my own way home. And 5 years later, here I am killing it with Water Tower Hill. So
running a whole ass publishing company. I'd say you're killing it.
Yeah, I mean, Water Tower Hill, everybody thinks this was the first year, and they're like, oh, you're just blowing up. And like, 5 years it took to get here. And then, yeah, now we're blowing up. So just remember, overnight success takes like 5 to 10 years in the dark.
There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that nobody really knows. And, when I had heard about it a few years ago when you and I had met, I had no idea. I knew that you were in the midst of it, but I didn't know how long. But
Yeah, and I was
it seems like overnight you guys had like a ton of people sign up. You're left and right. Every time I turn around, you're signing somebody or another author has a book out. And I think that's great. You guys have come such a long way in such a short time.
Yeah, and we're really working hard to not bite off more than we can chew. I refuse to do more than 2 books a month, just to make sure they're at the highest level of professionalism
Right.
and quality as we can. And even when we're able to do this full time, I'm not going to be one of those presses that'll just put out 100 books in a year. It's just, there's no way.
Right. Yeah. Brooklyn, I want to hear your cutesy little story. Let me know what when did you start writing? Why? Kind of give us
Oh,
that.
it's pretty funny. So I was a horror fan from the age of 2. That's a whole different story. I was also an artist since I was 2 because my mom was an artist. She taught me. I always wrote stories, but I didn't think anything of it. And when the teacher said I was going to be a writer when I grew up, I'm like, nah, I got my own thing going on. I'm just writing stories just cause. And then I ended up having like 2 full novels by the time I was in my mid 20s, and then my mom passed away, and I had every time I was trying to market my novel that had vampires in it, my urban fantasy novel that became Wrenching Fate eventually. Everyone was like, "Oh, like Twilight?" And I got so sick of hearing it. And I'm like, when was the first vampire craze? Because I'm like, I don't even think it was Dracula. I think it was earlier than that. Did some research, found out it was Lord Byron's doctor, Polidori, who wrote the first vampire story in English, from the infamous night where Byron and Shelley and everyone were partying all high on laudanum and had a ghost story competition, Frankenstein, and the vampire came from that. And I'm like, the Regency, that's always been my guilty pleasure. Regency romance novels, think Bridgerton. Love that stuff. So I wrote a Regency vampire romance called Bite Me, Your Grace, and got a 3-book deal with a trad house. It was fun, but yeah, definitely wasn't, the contract was awful and lots of regrets there. And I think I was writing romance novels and urban fantasy for almost a decade before I finally got the nerve to write horror, which was always my first love. So
Right.
now I'm doing both, and the Brooklyn Ann Butler is for the stories that are all horror and no romance. I also have a horror romance series, but
Wow. That that's crazy because you don't even look old enough.
oh man, no, I turned 42 in August.
Not at all. Not at all. Don't believe it for a moment. Looking good, kid. Looking good. So,
Thank you.
Bridget, how about you? I know that you've been on the scene because you and I have been Facebook friends for a minute, but I know you've been there for a minute. What was your, kind of like your start and how long, and are you still writing the same genre that you started in?
So yeah, I had no idea I was a horror writer. I actually joined a horror book group during the pandemic, and they had put out their own anthology, and they had another one coming up that was, they were opening for submissions. And I said, well, I've kind of been reading this for a while. Maybe I'll write one. And I don't expect the first horror story I ever write to get accepted. I mean, I'm not that egotistical. And then it did. And I said, well, now I'm unstoppable. So,
Right.
Awesome.
and so that's been about 2 years now. And, I've been writing mostly in short form. I have one novella out there, and I keep pitching novels. I don't know why, but I keep doing it. So now I have to write all of those. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. But it's been mainly horror focused, and weird horror is kind of my thing.
Weird.
Awesome. Wesley, what was your starting point? What kind of drove you into writing?
I wrote my first short story when I was 10 in 4th grade. Teacher wanted to have us write Halloween stories, and I wrote my first Halloween story, and I just fell in love with it from there on out. Kept going, had my first short story published nationally when I was 16. Kept going from there, submitting through my 20s, into my 30s, just different places. I finally published two horror novels back in 2013 and 2014. And then I shifted my focus into crime and thriller, which I work in now. So I had Some Kind of Truth come out in 2020, and then just recently with Water Tower Hill, I had In the Pale Light come out in August. And
Okay,
then,
well, congratulations.
thank you.
So, you've only gotten a couple books out then, or
4.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm working on my 4th one. So
There's a
am
good bit of
I-
time in between my horror writing and my thriller writing. I had some life situations going on in that time, so
Oh yeah,
things
yeah.
things had to be put on the back burner.
Yeah, we've signed up for 2 books, but hopefully more.
So, I kind of want to know, do you guys like writing anthologies? And we already know Heather loves her anthologies. Do you guys like writing anthologies, or do you guys like writing the novels? I kind of want to know, Wesley, what is your thoughts? Do you like doing the short stories? Or because, like, for me, I find it very hard to wrap up in a certain number of words.
Yeah,
that
I
a
have the
short
same.
story is.
I have the same problem. I can do it.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem doing it. I am a novelist. That my scope of a story is usually bigger. The way I tell a story is usually more grand than I can usually get into in a short story form. I have always struggled with short stories. It's an art form to actually tell and be a very good short storyteller.
Yes, to
And,
be that succinct is really
right.
difficult.
Yeah, and there is that art form, and there are
Mhm.
short story writers who are just so fantastic at it.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I don't think I'm bad at it, but I'm not. That's
I'm not
not
it.
where- I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. I'm not the expert short story writer. I am more of a novelist. I like spending time with the project, with all the different characters, with everything that comes with writing a novel, which
Mhm.
is sometimes good and sometimes bad because you get trapped in that novel for a good a year.
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
spending a year on a novel.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
you're in it for the long haul.
I think
Is
every writer needs to sit down at some point and make that decision, right? Which
Mhm.
direction they're best at. And like Wes, I'm a novelist as well. I love to spend a year on a book. I love all the in-between stuff that most people hate. All the filler, right? I actually love doing filler writing and living in the story. So writing my short story in this, I just wanted it to be funny. So I just told as many funny things as I could and then just tried to flesh it in. And I still don't think it's that great compared to like my longer writing, but I think every writer kind of has to sit down and really ask themselves which direction they want to go with that. Because you like shorter stuff too,
Yeah,
don't you?
the minute you asked that question, Jen, I was like, oh, I know Josh's answer. He hates writing short stories.
I do.
I loathe it. I loathe it.
I love it. I can knock out a short story, in a day and be done with it. I don't have the attention span to want to spend an entire year on one story. It's like my brain has moved on to something else.
And see, like
Before I would finish a whole novel.
like what Wesley was saying, that is a whole art form into itself.
Mhm.
That's amazing. Bridget, how do you feel? You like longer stories, short stories?
I'm with Heather on team ADHD AF. That's my, I I love shorts, and I think it's because even when I'm writing longer form, I like writing scenes, and to me, a short is just a scene. And it's also the way I fell in love with horror was reading the Alfred Hitchcock anthologies. I used to check those out at the library, And the way a short story could just scare the absolute crap out of me, it's so
Yes.
impressive.
Yes.
And then you don't have to, because I also loved my Stephen King novels, but he would ruin it at some point. I'm like, okay, yes, it was really scary, but now
Every
what is all
time.
this extra stuff? So yeah,
Every time.
so that's really, and I liked his shorts as well. So it's a cool genre to write in, and it also gives me that instant dopamine hit. Like I got something out there, and there it is, and it's a complete thing, and it's done.
Are you? Have you ever read Dean Koontz?
Oh yeah.
In my opinion, and I know this is probably not going to be a popular one, he's better than Stephen King.
Strange Highways was awesome. I
He's
will
a
give
lot
him
less
that.
wordy.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Twilight Eyes, and
I enjoyed Phantoms.
I liked Intensity.
Phantoms was
Phantoms
a good
is
one.
incredible.
Intensity lived up to its name.
Intensity.
Phantoms.
He's just. I
hate
don't
that
think there's
stupid cover.
one book that I didn't like. I've never not finished a book by Stephen King and or Dean Koontz, but Dean Koontz, I literally went. Every day when I went to Goodwill, whenever I went to Goodwill, I'd be Dean Koontz hunting because they loved to drop him off at Goodwill, and I'm like 50 cents, hell yeah.
They were always my flight reads, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my favorite thing about Dean Koontz, and I actually do this in my own writing, because we can talk about styles and stuff like that, but Dean Koontz is two sides of a spectrum where he could write something like Intensity, and then he can write Odd Thomas. And that's like two completely different pacing,
Yes.
character development, emotional driven in one and super impactful in the other. And I love writers that can do that. I think Stephen King plays with nostalgia a lot, and he also has
I love
out their ideas, right? But the nostalgic part of Stephen King's writing is where he gets into those long descriptive paragraphs that we all remember what Saturday morning cartoons and two bowls of Captain Crunch was like, right? And he gets into that nostalgia. But Dean Koontz has depth and different writing genres and different writing styles, and I think that it's a different kind of brilliance to me.
I agree.
Absolutely.
There's some times where I'm just like, Stephen King, you really missed the mark. You went this way and you could have gone this way. And I don't know if the alcoholism was talking at that moment or if it was just literally he got tired. But
it's funny. What I like, and I don't want to take up all the, but because I can talk books all day long. But the difference between his writing style and his son's writing style, is so generational. And Joe grew up in the same house with Stephen King and has the same kind of thought patterns and stuff. And I've talked to Joe and I know how he is, but their writing styles are so different. It's incredible. And it just shows the generational gap, I think.
Joe's better at character arcs.
Yeah.
He does actual growth arcs. Like his characters start out as kind of pieces of, and then they grow. And I respect that.
If you look at Dr. Sleep, I was like, that was such a weird and different way to go off with that. And I was like, that I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I really respected that one too.
Yeah. Brooklyn, I want to hear from you. What is your style? Do you like the shorties or do you like give me some content, the long novels?
I was always team novel, especially because I used to read the books this thick.
Yeah. Yes.
I didn't write one until recently, but I wrote I worked for the census and went up in Spirit Lake, Idaho, and I found the creepiest church. So it gave me a story idea. So I wrote my very first, it's not my first short story ever because I wrote assigned ones that the teachers apparently liked.
Right.
I don't remember. I felt like it was just something I pulled out of my ass, but
right.
But yeah, this church story, it ended up winning first place in the Idaho Writers League competition. It was briefly in a heavy metal themed anthology because it was about a heavy metal band in a haunted church.
Oh, that's great.
But the publisher fell apart. There was drama, and so I released it on my own as a prequel to my urban fantasy series because it was the same characters. And now it's anyone can get it free with my newsletter. But it wasn't until I wrote my horror romance series and Heather read the haunted house themed one and she approached me for House of Haunts, and I'm like, damn, this is fun. And then I wrote the story for Hospital of Haunts, and then there was an anthology call. This publisher fell apart before the anthology could happen, which is sad, but they were doing submission calls for songs inspired by Tori Amos's music. So of course I picked the song The
You're like,
Waitress.
yes.
Yes, I'm like, this is so tailor-made for me. So I have a story out on submission since that one fell apart. So for about a killer waitress.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's amazing what we
I'm gonna write more short stories. I want to put together a whole ghost themed collection eventually. Since
Oh, that would be cool. That would be cool. I just think it's amazing what we all as authors come up with or where we get our inspiration from. Like I have one that I am currently writing along with my 4th book in my series. I have one that I'm writing that it's based off of a street in Arizona, in Eloy, Arizona, because I drove by it one day and read the street sign, and I was like, that would make a great book. And it's
Yeah.
out in the middle of farm country, and the road is Cornman Road. So of course I have to write a
totally.
scary story on that because it's in the middle of nowhere. Where is the weirdest place you've gotten your inspiration? Heather, I want to hear from you first. Where's the strangest place?
Ooh, that's a good question. So this is gonna sound terrible, and I don't know that it's weird, but it's the most like forefront in my mind right now. I very recently found out that a cousin of mine, they did a welfare check on him, and he was found probably OD'd in his apartment, which is terrible. And I like it just killed me. But my brain, in that weird half asleep state you get in sometimes, where it's sort of processing things.
Yeah.
This idea came into my head about, and like this first line just popped into my head where this girl's talking and she's like, I'm fairly certain my next door neighbor is dead, and this weird sort of story started happening in my head about this girl who like doesn't like to leave her apartment, but the man in the apartment next to her, she saw him come home and she never saw him leave again, and but there's like this whole mystery to whether or not he's actually dead. And in my head I'm going, is this a ghost story? Is this like a zombie story? Is this a
right
kind of human crime story? But all I know is there's this girl in this apartment, and in the apartment next to her, she's pretty sure her neighbor's dead, and something's gonna happen. I don't know. But also another weird place, I got a story idea. We were driving home one day in a really horrible, horrible rainstorm, and we stopped. There was this railroad tracks that cut our little small town we lived in at the time in half. Pouring down rain, and the things, whatever they're called, that come down across the railroad track to stop people going, came down, and it was raining so hard and so loud that you couldn't hear that noise. They make that ding, ding, ding noise. You couldn't hear it, and it just came down like right in front of us. And I thought, what if you were in such a bad storm that you didn't hear this or see this in time, and you came through and the train hit you, but then you woke up, like I have this picture in mind of this woman, and she woke up and she's been hit, and now she's still stuck in her small town, and it's just raining all the time, but there's nobody else there, and she's wandering around the whole town alone, and all this weird stuff is happening. So, I mean, just literally anywhere at any time, story ideas just, pop into you.
Yes.
No, I'm so glad I married you.
I know.
So Josh, where's your weirdest?
So mine's kind of weird. I thought that I would be a series writer because I love fantasy. I'm not a horror writer, as everybody else is. I write dark urban fantasy, and I thought I would be a series writer. And so the series I'm writing right now, I thought would just take place in one place, and it can't be that small. It has to be a lot bigger than that. I actually have 8 different worlds, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but for me, I cannot keep my characters in one place. They have to go on road trips. I have road trips in just like every single one of my books. And it's places that I've been. I'm pretty well traveled. So if I've been there, my characters go there. But as far as the creepiest, I wouldn't say the creepiest, but the one that pops up the most, and it's in the majority of. Let me see. It's only not in one book so far. Is the place we got married is Bishop's Castle in Rye, Colorado. This one man for the last 40 years has built this castle in the mountains by hand by himself. He's a masonry and a metal worker, and it started. His dad helped him plant the initial kind of center weight bearing column, and we got married there, and it's beautiful. It's called Bishop's Castle. If anybody wants to look it up, but I love that place so much, and it's like a node of my life for me. It's like a node, right? It's big things happen there for me, and so big things happen there for my characters, and I put that place in multiple books at different time periods. Like I have in my apocalyptic world-ending book, it's in there. It survives the apocalypse. In another one, like modern day, I have a political party come through there to do like I'm writing a high fantasy novel right now, and they're about to be there again. So I don't know if it's creepy, but it's certainly a node in my stories that a lot of people have now looked it up to see what it is and how awesome it is because I put it in so many books.
I think that's cool.
Kind of like
It was a
Stephen
very
King with
important
Dairy.
part. Yeah, it's a very
Yeah.
important part of your life, and you put it in there at every chance you get. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
So, all right, who's next? Bridget or Brooklyn?
Oh.
So tell me the weirdest place. Sorry, I had a hangnail that was driving me nuts, and I cannot
Oh.
function without getting that.
Same. No, I
sorry.
got cold. I had to go get my cardigan.
Yeah. So what's the weirdest inspiration aha moment that happened to you? Was it something you drove by? Was it something that happened to you that you were like, oh yeah, this would be creepy?
Oh, I had to I grew up in a haunted house and stuff, and I did get to invoke that later. It was when
all over the place.
yeah, all over the place. And like when I was rebuilding the engine for my Datsun, I had this girl in my head who was just really angry, and I didn't know what she was so angry about, and she had just this chip on her shoulder. But yeah, that's Akasha and Wrenching Fate. I got to know her, wrote her story. But no, I think the weirdest is when I was agonizing over the fact that I really, really wanted to write horror, but every time I wrote something, the characters would fall in love with each other, and that's how I ended up a romance author primarily. And
Right.
My boyfriend, who doesn't do horror at all, even though there's horror stuff all over the house, thanks to me, is like, well, why can't you do both? And then I was thinking, okay, all the movies I love have a final girl. Yeah, why don't I just do the same thing but with a final couple? So the first one, I'm like, of course,
Yeah.
the first one has to be a summer camp slasher.
Of
So
course.
it was just like so fun writing the list of all these campers who die and who lives, and I subverted the trope. So everyone who has sex lives, and the stoners
Nice.
live. But
Stoners live.
yeah, I just let them. They weren't hurting anyone.
No, they were too busy getting
No.
high.
Yeah, pretty much.
They're
So
too busy
let those
chilling.
guys live, and it was just like I pitched it, and I didn't think my agent would go for it, and she's like, "That sounds awesome." And then I was just like giddy writing the goriest death scenes in between this.
Nice. It's always good when you can meld.
Mhm.
So, Wesley, how about you?
I don't really have any creepy places that I've actually gotten ideas. Mostly because I write crime and thrillers. And my stories are mostly set in real situations. So pretty much any idea I have, all I have to do is open up the laptop and pull up any
Look on
news
the news.
article.
Yeah.
So,
I
but for situations like
Yeah.
the scenes and stuff like that, mostly it's like when I'm doing things. It's like I'll get the scene in my head or start thinking about it when I'm out chopping wood or mowing the lawn or cleaning up the physical activity, weightlifting, stuff like that. It's not when I'm. It's mostly like things like that. So I
Yeah,
don't
the
really
book
have.
that I'm writing, that I was inspired by the name of the street. that is actually based off of a real life person that I know, who is a detective here. And I was just over at their house, and I talked to him. I'm good friends with his wife, and I was talking to him about some of his cases. And he had a couple of really big doozies when he first started in homicide. And he was talking about there was one they had to do with the satanic cult. There was another one where the guy said the hatchet man made him do it. And I don't know if you guys know who the hatchet man is, but the hatchet man is the guy from
ICP?
ICP. Yes.
Whoop, whoop.
ICP. Yeah. Whoop whoop. So funny. So he's the little hatchet man. Everybody calls himself. He even called himself a gigolo and all that stuff. Which that's a whole nother cult following. They're a bunch of weirdos that I used to be one of them. But
My brother's one.
yeah, he said the hatchet man made him do what he did. And then there was a guy who said the blackbirds were telling him to do stuff. So there's some doozies out there.
Yeah.
Things that I could never think of.
Yeah. Yeah, like where the murder happens in my latest book, Into Pale Light, is a video. It happened at a video store, and the way the video store is set up is backwards. So the front of the entrance is the rear, what would look from the street, the rear of the store. Well, that was actually how a Hollywood Video was set up that I used to go to as a kid. So you entered into the back of the store. So
Yeah.
it was the perfect place to set a crime. So
Nice.
that's where that came from for Into Pale Light.
Nice. Bridget, what about you? What is the weirdest thing, inspiration that you've gotten where you're just like, oh, why would I get whatever? But yeah,
This
what
one
is
was-
the weirdest inspiration?
Well, this one's actually really tough for me because I am always finding inspiration. And my husband actually, when we're on vacation, sometimes I'm like, hey, do you want to be really messed up right now? And he's like, okay, can you wait until like we're no longer in the ocean or like done with dinner or something before you bring this up? But
My guy too.
I've actually gotten
Mine
two
too.
inspirations from this discussion right here already, because one, I used to be a prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney. And
Oh my God.
when I would go to the prison, the men's wards all had the gangs you would expect, like
Yes.
those members. But on the women's floor, they were all juggalettes. So that was always super interesting to me. And
That's all they had. It was all they had.
I'm also going to approach Heather about another anthology because I also have a dead guy on the other side of the wall story, which is called 9 Days. And yeah, and it's based on real life. So yeah, maybe we could just do a whole like dead guy on the other side of the wall anthology. But the weirdest place I've ever gotten inspiration was actually from this episode of Drunk History about the psychedelic dolphin experiments. And
Oh, yeah.
and it kind of turned into this entire weird post-apocalyptic we're at war with the ocean story called Dolphin Hunt, which I again mistakenly pitched to someone and they said, yes, please write that. So now I have to write Dolphin Hunt too. And while it's not finished, it does have an ending and it has its first blurb. And the blurb is, I begged her not to write this. So I'm very excited.
Is that from your husband?
It's actually from another writer.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh. That is so funny. And and I love hearing, how other people operate because I don't feel so abnormal. So thank you.
I will say, because I said earlier, I'm not a horror writer. I'm writing a horror book right now. And when I go to AuthorCon next weekend, I'm reading the prologue in chapter 1 of it. But it's from just studying, right? Just studying history and stuff. But it's about being diagnosed morally insane, which back in the day, if you were just different, they could diagnose you morally insane and do shock treatments and pharmaceutical treatments on you. And I was told that horror is supposed to horrify you. And I can't imagine a more horrifying situation than something real, right? To me, real is so much more horrifying.
Especially if you end it where it's like, yeah, this happened back in the 50s.
Yeah, and that happened to people. They were yanked out of their homes and sent to hospitals. I think just as everybody was saying, everybody has kind of a something will trigger a story or trigger a story idea. But man, just studying almost anything can just give a writer a really good base for a story.
Oh yeah. My husband, he's like he cracks me up. He should be an author because he has some of the best stories or some of the best ideas that I've ever heard come from somebody. He's like, "Hey, I wish I was smart enough to write." And I'm like, "Well, if you don't feel you are, I'm right here. Let's get this going." I'm like, "Let's do this." But, he's very intelligent when it comes to really jacked up ideas and story ideas. And I'm just like, ah,
My brother is the same way. Now, my brother, we actually asked my brother to write a story in this anthology as his very first writing credit. I don't know that he'll ever write anything else again. I don't
yeah,
think he liked a lot of the process, but he has a whole book of ideas of stories. And I'm like, Jay, you got to write those things. You got to write them. It's
right.
fantastic. But it is crazy how there are so many people out there that have such fantastic story ideas but don't
Yes.
have the ability to write them down. That's a shame.
And it's just, I don't know if it's the ability, but I think it's just, he sits there, he's like, I can barely string a sentence together. And I'm like, me too. I get online and I'm like, I'm like, that's what we have Grammarly for. And editors. That's what we have them for, but
Mhm.
it's just, I think a lot of that is self-confidence. Cause I know when I first started writing in 21 or 22, I can't remember now, 22. When I first started writing back then, um, I was like, I don't nobody, when I was everybody on the show that I had come from was all like, no, you need to write, you need to write, you need to write. So I did it and I'm just like, nobody gonna want to read this. It's a 40,000 word juvenile book. I really I'm glad I went and took it easy with my first series without it's zombie horror, so it's not and I didn't write it to where it's so grotesque. I didn't write a lot of nasty scenes in there. It was more about the people. So for me, because going through a zombie apocalypse and a horror, trying to do it when you have your own personal problems like alcoholism, or you have a self, you have self-doubt where you never thought you were good enough. You've
Mhm.
always, so I think that is a little bit more horrifying than, going through just a zombie apocalypse and seeing blood, guts, and gore
Yeah.
everywhere. So,
Yep.
trying to figure out, mental, how are you going to maintain your mental health? How are you going to stay sane? How are
Mhm.
you, not going to go drink and find a bottle if you're an alcoholic? How are you going to keep yourself, on the straight and narrow? But,
Mhm.
so that was kind of my aspect, but I'm glad I took it easy because, I kind of got a gauge of people who would read my stuff. Now it's, as the books go on, I get worse. But is that something that, did you guys have a problem with getting it, like, for the horror people? Did you guys have a problem getting into the gore, into the, or did you just you were like, come on in, Satan, let's write this now? That's, did you just kind of like let it loose?
I think you definitely have to have a love for it.
I mean, my kind of horror that I write is not extreme or grotesque, really, in any way. And I've talked about this on this show before. The mine's but much more like emotional and
Yeah.
psychological and supernatural, but not in a gory sort of way. So I was totally okay writing that. That's just how I,
Yeah.
So.
I'm the same. Now that I'm writing this very cerebral psychological horror from the patient's viewpoint, well, it messes with me, right? You gotta, like, I usually write my fantasy in the mornings, but I have to write this one at night. It's the weirdest thing. I can't write it in the morning.
I completely understand it.
Um, but I will say I've talked to other authors that have written stories, like Patrick Fontes that wrote Bloodset. When he's like,
Yes.
he's so into the story, he's freaking himself out and has to sleep with lights on and stuff, you know.
I love Patrick. He's a great guy. Great guy. Bridget, how about you? Have you your horror stuff? Did you just notice that it was something that you were just like, oh yeah, this is natural?
It was a threshold I crossed at one point, and after that, it just came easily. And I will say that I think a big part of it is because I am a person who was afraid of everything. I mean, I was afraid of the dark until I was like 44 years old. I slept with the light on until I was 44. And I am the person who always like imagines the worst case scenario, car accidents, the elevator collapsing, fires, everything. And so I think that it's something I can visualize really well. So it's something I enjoy writing. And my style has been, I've been told that it's kind of like, oh, it's funny. It's kind of lighthearted. Ha 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 ha. Oh, Jesus Christ, Bridget, because it takes like a hard left turn at some point, and then it's a little too far. And I'll also say that since I've been writing it, I sleep with the light off and I sleep like a baby. So,
I'm so proud of you.
kind of amazing.
Recognizing those demons.
Yeah. Better than
Wesley,
therapy.
right? Wesley, how about you? I know you said you write crime thrillers. Is real life stranger than fiction, in your
Oh
opinion?
yeah. Oh God, yes. Oh yeah. Oh, you couldn't. Some of the stuff that I've read, and that, just the different crimes that have happened. It's you couldn't make it up. There's not a writer out there who could make that story and make it believable.
Yeah.
Like you just couldn't do it. But it's real. For me, I'm not really about the gore at all. That's not something that interests me. Now my novel, Some Kind of Truth, I do have a particular scene in chapter 5 where the reporter is looking at a videotape that has a murder and stuff on it. I'll just leave it at that. And it was very, very important to me that I didn't go into exploitation in that scene and made it just about what he needed to see in that scene so he can further the plot, and he gets the clues he needs to continue on. So that was one where I had overwritten it a little bit and then pulled it back and pulled it back and pulled it back just so we got just what we needed and we didn't get more than we needed.
Got it. What Brooklyn, what about you and your horror? Because you're horror romance. So like how do you put in, I guess, well it's not horror erotica, right? It's
No. Yeah. And not everything is. Anything under the Brooklyn Ann Butler name is no romance. Brooklyn Ann, yes, romance. But no, even in my like girliest, most Bridgertoniest, this fluffy romance, there is always a scene that's gory. And like the love interest gets staked by a vampire hunter, and the heroine's got to get the stake out, and it's all squelchy and bone and
making that
feel
suction
him
noise.
And, yeah, and I was just, and another one wants to be a doctor, and she does surgery on the vampire, and it's just like I always had that. And
how much research does that entail?
My aunt's an ER nurse, so that she was very helpful. And
just stories, yeah.
I even made an ER nurse character in another book. But with the horror and the romance, so I'm always character based first, no matter whether there's gore or not. But when I do write the gore, it's so much fun. I like giggle about it, and to the point where my fourth Be Mine book was homage to the movie Night of the Demons. One of my favorite ones ever. And my publisher's like, oh, I know you were just gleefully just giggling while you were writing that. And the reviews came back. For some reason, it's classified on Amazon as romantic suspense. No, that's like the crime thriller with a romance subplot. It is not demons tearing people apart and decapitated heads and crawling and other fun stuff and
Yeah.
fluids everywhere. So the reviewers were like, well, this was really good, but I got nightmares. And that's what gave me the courage to write The Graveyard Girls, which is going to be going on submission soon. And it's like it, but with girls in the 90s. And it's like balls to the wall horror. I don't even try to be like my Night of the Demons one was supposed to be cheesy, but it scared people. And that makes me happy.
Well,
Heather
sounds
has
like
a
they
whole
made
Brooklyn,
it.
I'm so glad to hear you say that because I complain all the time that all the horror coming of age books are all boys. It's always
All
these
of
little
them.
boys, and maybe they throw in like one token female, and I'm like,
Yeah.
where's,
I told
where's
you
the
my
girl coming of age books?
I told you
So
my
I'm
answer to
so
that
glad
is
you're writing
nobody has the balls to write 5 teenage girls coming to age. That's just
Yeah,
Do you
nobody
know
has
how
the balls.
Mine are
loud?
11. So
Do you know how loud that would be?
On
they
the
are
page,
pretty loud.
Yeah,
Loud and violent. Yeah.
it
And,
has.
and lots of
have
fart
two-
jokes because
I
they're
have
11.
2 preteen daughters, and for one, I could never put them in a book, right? I can put my sons in books, they don't care. They're like, kill me off, I don't care. But if I try to write my daughters, I will do something wrong or say something wrong, and they won't see all the great stuff I wrote. They'll see the one wrong thing, and I'll never live it down.
I have never said that in my life.
I can't
Well,
believe you
guys,
have me wear a purple shirt. I would never wear.
I hate purple. I
Cool.
want to thank our time is up, so I want to give everybody a chance to put out there where they can be found. But I want to thank all of you for being here. You guys are a great group, and I definitely need to get you on individually. Wes, why don't we start with you? Give us where we can find you. Where are your books? What do you have coming up?
You can find me at wesleysmithbooks.com. You can find me on Facebook at Wesley Smith Books. You can find me on Instagram at WSmithBooks and on watertowerhill.com. Next, I have coming up They Came at Night with Water Tower Hill. That is my first foray into psychological thrillers. So, and it is each book I write is usually different. It's different in tone, it's different characters, it's just totally different. So that's one that I'm excited for Heather to read and to get to get her feedback on that one.
Oh boy. Bridget, where can we find you and what's going on for you next?
I am everywhere online at BD Brave. That's BEEDEE Brave. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. Coming up is Hospital of Haunts on Tuesday. And then that same week, I have another anthology dropping. It's called Fragile, where we rolled a dice and we all had to pick something based on our roll of what was in the box. And mine is Gwyneth Paltrow's head. So it's pretty exciting story coming out there. And then after
Beautiful.
that, I don't know if I can announce the next one yet. So yes.
There
And
will be
the
something,
novel whenever I finish it. So yeah.
Got it. Brooklyn Ann, give us where we can find you. What do you have coming up? I'm excited to hear.
Okay, so I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Blue Sky as Brooklyn Ann, and then on Instagram as Brooklyn Ann Author. My website's brooklynannauthor.com. And yeah, next I have coming up is Hospital of Haunts, my haunted daycare story. It's so much fun. And then in November, I have my 10th Bride's Prophecy novel. This is like my Dark Tower series. It connects to everything, and a big major character stories coming in. It's called Redeeming the Angel, and it's going to be a love story that takes place over 2,000 years. So very
Oh my
crazy. In April will be the re-release of my summer camp slasher romance, His Final Girl, and yeah, and hopefully my killer waitress story gets its home.
Hopefully, we'll be crossing our fingers for that one. Josh and Heather, what do you guys have going on, and where can people find you and all of your peeps?
Well, we have going on this. This has been our life for about the last
several
know.
months.
A couple of months for sure. I feel like
October 1st, right?
everything we've
It comes
been.
out on Tuesday.
comes
We've
out
already
October
released
1st.
the cover of next year's HOH. It's Hotel of Haunts.
Mhm.
I have a book coming out in December. It's book 6 of the Mission series. It's called Least of These. And next year, my first horror book will come out. It's called In the Shadows They Wait. And I will be debuting the prologue in chapter 1 at AuthorCon next weekend.
Very good.
And you're starting
Any-
the series.
I was gonna say, what you got going on?
I am starting a new series that's kind of getting away from horror and it's more into
Witches.
fantasy, witches kind of stuff. I mean, there'll be some dark, creepy stuff, but it's more fantasy magic.
Think Mayfair Witches, Anne Rice kind of.
It's kind of
Okay.
Mayfair Witches meets practical magic meets
Backwoods.
the All Souls trilogy. It's all kind of that, but it's set in the Ozarks, so it's kind of Scots Irish in the Ozarks.
Okay.
Witch kind of stuff, which we're
Yeah.
And you
in
can
there,
find
so
us.
she knows what that's like.
And you can find us at towerhill.com, as Wes pointed out. My website's joshualoydfox.com. And we're on social media. It's either Water Tower Hill Publishing, Joshua Lloyd Fox, or Heather Doherty.
Yep.
There we go. All right, everybody. Well, I want to thank all of you for showing up and being here. You guys are tons of fun. Again, I'm going to be friend requesting you guys that I'm not friends with already, but we're going to have you guys back on individually because I definitely want to talk to each one of you individually. This has been such a great time. So thank you so much for being here. And I want to thank everybody out there for being here and just watching us. Don't forget to get your copy of The Hospital of Haunts out October 1st. So we're looking forward to it. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.